So, have you ever actually looked up the definition of romance? Because it's not the process of two or so people like slowly falling in love with each other. If you look it up, and I use Ecosia for looking things up, by the way, not Google. The first definition you get is a feeling of excitement and mystery associated with love. So, those first few keywords, excitement and mystery. Yeah, no, that definition is essentially what is being used here. One Piece is not a story about so and so falling in love, but One Piece is a story about romance. Romance for, yeah. So anyways, yeah, okay. First chapter of One Piece, titled Romance Dawn. What we have is essentially, in this, we're introduced to our main character, Luffy, as a child, and you are essentially given the inciting incident that inspires Luffy to go on the adventure that spans to this day within One Piece, right? And there's just a few interesting points that I kind of want to elaborate on. This chapter in particular is very much so, I can be described as about role models. And I think it demonstrates in a very interesting way a kind of example of it takes a village to raise a child, you know, that quote. Luffy is very clearly an orphaned child in some kind of way, even though that's never explicitly stated. But he essentially, within this chapter, as far as we know, the closest thing he has to a father figure is this man named Shanks. And the closest thing he has to a mother figure is this woman named Makino who runs the bar, right? And then Shanks and all his friends and the local townsfolk, basically, you are shown throughout this chapter. Everybody is like doing their best to set a good example for little old Luffy here, right? Of course, the most interesting character to talk about is Shanks, but before that, I do want to give obviously Makino her flowers. I figured like there's less to talk about there, so let's go through that. Let's go with her stuff first. I said earlier she's the closest thing to a mother figure, but she could also be seen as kind of a big sister figure too. Either way, she very much, in her introduction scene, actually demonstrates almost everything you need to know about her. And like also, this is my favorite little bit of the chapter is the bit where she's introduced. She asks Luffy if he wants something to eat, and then Luffy says, "Thanks, I'll put it on my treasure tab." Essentially, I like this bit because the idea of this treasure tab and him promising to pay her back with money he gets as a pirate. It essentially establishes that like she's essentially making food for him for free, which is like, yeah, no, she has no problem doing that whatsoever and playing that part and taking care of him, but also she is like supporting his dream in that way of she says like, I'm sure he'll pay it back, right? Like, and that, like, I just really like that little moment. There is also like later on in the chapter where like the pirates are gone and Luffy just kind of go like you see Luffy just sitting in the bar by himself, like holding an empty cup, and that does also establish in itself that he does just go in there by himself pretty much and just talks to Makoto as an older figure, and like uses that as a place to hang out. In his first chapter, it's kind of established like this bar is the main, is essentially the home, I guess, the closest thing you got. Again, this chapter does not elaborate at all anything about Luffy's parents or like genuine home situation at whatsoever. So you really are just given the idea this is an orphan and this bar is this kid's home. But yeah, no, like, and then so if you have Makino being the feminine role model, on the other side you have Shanks being the masculine role model. Now, I really like what this chapter does in terms of you have Shanks being like a positive masculine role model, and then versus the like crappy thug villain of the chapter, who is the textbook definition of toxic masculinity, right? He is very clearly a man who genuinely believes in the bullshit hierarchy of just like tough men being on top, right? Women and children being on the bottom. And if you can put yourself above another man, like that is priority. He like damn near everything he says in this entire chapter plays into that idea in his head of like being at the top of a fucking hierarchy. It's crazy how intense it is, like rereading these chapters, and it's just like everything this dude says, man. Like, and yeah, no, and then to come back to it, Shanks basically turned that shit on its head, and being like, it basically far and away coming across looking like a much stronger man by not only being a good person, but like not only being a good person, not only understanding that kind of hierarchy bullshit is bullshit, and like showing all the respect in the world to Makino as the bar owner, and also Luffy being a literal child. He does make fun of Luffy, but like he's very much doing in the kind of like, again, I said father figure before, but you could also see it as a big brother kind of thing. But yeah, no, like just right, just from you, the impression you get from this first chapter, Shanks is fucking awesome and is a like absolutely a worthy role model. And yeah, no, that plays into the thing of like this first chapter. If you know anything else about One Piece past this point, you know that like most of these characters like hardly appeared. Yeah, it's really it's centered around Luffy's journey, but these were the people of Luffy's childhood, and this is the like incident that inspired everything that comes after it, right? Shanks is the person who inspired Luffy in this sort of way, right? This is the incident that awakened a romance in Luffy for adventure, right? I just did the thing where I put my hands to the side. I see, you can't see. I'll do hand gestures if you can damn see, but like whatever. But yeah, I want to do this real quick because I want to cover One Piece through this series. And yeah, no, it's very easy to read chapter one. I think chapter one makes a strong enough impression that like if you like chapter one, like I think it's good enough to inspire you to consider to continue. Maybe not to catch up all the way. You should catch up. So yeah, if you followed my intention here and basically you never read One Piece, but you just read chapter one in preparation for listening to this episode, obviously read One Piece, read the whole thing, catch up to it. I don't know if Shonen Jump still has like $3 memberships, but like if you can do that, do that. It's worth it. it's absolutely worth it to read and catch up to One Piece. Now, I say read it. Read One Piece. Don't watch it. Reading One Piece will be so much faster. Uh, you'll see occasionally like Twitter threads of people basically being like, I'm starting One Piece, and they'll like go through with their reactions to certain moments and all that kind of thing. Obviously, don't look that up if you haven't read One Piece, because obviously they'll spoil things for you. But usually when people do these, it takes like 2 or 3 months. I'd imagine it takes like 3 months if you're reading regularly to catch up to One Piece entirely. And it's like, that might sound a lot if you've never experienced a super long story, but trust me, it's not so like it's worth it. It's worth it, man. Because the thing too is One Piece's structure is you're essentially experiencing like 30 or 40 smaller stories at this point. You're experiencing a bunch of smaller stories, so you can also there are also natural points where to take a break too if you're willing to take even longer overall to catch up. But it's worth it. One Piece is like one of the greatest stories of the modern times, and provided no disaster completely erases its existence or whatever, it will absolutely be a story that is like remembered and studied like centuries from now. It is that good. It is a modern classic, and you should read it. I will kind of talk about certain parts of One Piece with this series. Like for example, I don't want to do every single storyline. I'm gonna do certain things, and I'll talk about like stuff that I feel is worth bringing up. That is like for example, I think currently I definitely want to do East Blue. I want to talk about Skypiea. I want to talk about Marineford and the lead up to that, and I want to talk about Wano. But I don't know how else I'm going to structure talking about One Piece as far as this series goes. And I have other spoilers episode ideas for One Piece videos, like character videos, for example, on plenty of stuff that I want to do in the future too. So yeah, no, I will definitely be doing a lot of One Piece content in the future, but I don't want to get stuck in that process of trying to review all of One Piece, and it takes me like fucking years. I don't want to get stuck in that process. I don't want this to be a One Piece channel, but I do love One Piece, and I do want to express my thoughts on the parts that I love, or the parts that I think are worth talking about. Like, to me, of course, like all of it is worth talking about. It's a very in-depth series, but yeah, no, I want to get it down to what I really want to cover. Hope y'all have enjoyed reading the first chapter of One Piece and also listen to me talk about it. Y'all have a good one.